2, the planning proposal for Golden Valley Road, Jamberoo, page 103 on your business paper. Councillor Way.
Yes, a question for the Director of Environment. Now, given that I know it's unusual for a planning process like this, but Council did vote to go out and see what the community response was, and I think it was something like 143 to 7 on the responses. This has no effect on the recommendation, and if the second question is, if the recommendation is rejected, the proponent still has the option to go to planning. I'd also foreshadow I have a motion to.
Any other questions? We have a recommendation.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to answer Councillor Way's question. If this doesn't go forward at this particular time, the applicant has the potential to apply to the Department of Planning for a rezoning review, and then the determination is then referred to the Joint Regional Planning Panel for determination. So they would actually take on the role of determining gateway.
Are there any other questions? There is a recommendation. Someone move that recommendation.
Yeah, I've got to move it. I'm moving, Mayor, that we reject the planning proposal. If I get a seconder.
Seconded, Councillor Sloan. Okay, the recommendation now is that we reject the recommendation. Does anyone wish to debate the recommendation?
You asking somebody to speak for it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, the whole idea was to go to the community and see what sort of response we got about this particular planning proposal, and in my view there was a general agreement that they didn't want it to go ahead from Jamberoo, and given that it's on the eastern side, and I think most of the councillors here when they stood for election said we were going to have separate villages and that type of atmosphere. The other things that would come up with another planning proposal there with infrastructure and so on and all these kinds of costs, I think as councillors we have a duty to reject it. But I would add that and mention that council staff were quite within their rights to propose this and recommend it to be accepted. And I was a little bit disappointed with some of the emails there that were criticising council staff. They've done their duty, and it was up to them to follow protocols and to recommend that this planning proposal go through. So I'd just like that noted too. But I'll keep it simple. I just want to say I want it rejected. I don't want any lines on maps, and I've supported a lot of the planning that's gone on in Jamberoo, and I think that there's been quite a bit lately, and I think it was something like a 43% increase, and at this point in time I think they've done the heavy lifting. Thank you.
Councillor Sloan.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to correct one thing that Councillor Way said, that the council staff were recommending approval. It actually says that council determined the subject planning proposal having regard to the commentary above.
Yes.
So there wasn't a clear recommendation from the staff that this be approved. But you know, I think everyone's been very clear for a long time where I have stood on this matter, and I argued very strongly about Whyalla, and it was the most bitter defeat by far in the previous council for me. But the thing for Jamberoo is that somehow we've got to get our heads around, you know, what is the character, what the community really wants there. I mean, it's been overwhelming in terms of the responses to us and what they want. But I did have a call from someone at Jamberoo today who pointed out that they really want more businesses, and they want, you know, a chemist and things like that, which prompted me to just go into what population you'd need to actually get a chemist. All these ratios are out there. You can find out, you know, doctor-patient ratios. And so to get a chemist, you need a town with a population of 3,800, Mr Mayor, to support a chemist. Does the population of Jamberoo want to become that big to support a chemist? A petrol station, 3,000. You need 3,000 people to support a petrol station on average across Australia. And that's including areas where there's lots of traffic going past. You know, the newsagents have been struggling everywhere. You know, they're going slowly backwards, a few % a year in terms of their turnover, and it's a very tough thing for towns and villages to keep their newsagents, and I hope the one in Jamberoo continues to prosper and thrive and diversify. But what is it that is going to grow and keep jobs in Jamberoo? I believe the core attraction to Jamberoo is tourism. And if we turn it into Albion Park or Shell Cove, that is not. They might get business from more locals living there, but the tourists will stop going there, Mr Mayor. And I think that that's going to be a negative for the economy. But I don't know how. Sometime over the next few years, we'll have to sit down and nut it all out. But I'm very happy to support Councillor Way's motion that we reject this planning proposal. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Rice.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion if Councillor Way is willing. I'd like to add to the motion. So Councillor Way wants to move that we reject this planning proposal, but I would like to add further that Council engages with the community in order to locate areas suitable for future development in Jamberoo and to assist development of a Jamberoo-specific development control plan.
I would suggest that's excuse me. That's not actually an amendment. That would be probably
an addendum, I suppose, to the motion.
It would probably be another motion rather than. I think this is specific to this planning proposal, so that I think.
Well, can I move it as a second motion?
Once we've dealt with this motion, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Councillor Steele.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to speak against the recommendation. I believe this is quite premature. I personally would like to see it go through the gateway. If they support it, then it would come back for us to debate, and we could go through all this. I think a lot of the residents on this one have jumped the gun. What concerns me about Jamberoo, it's a great place. The population of, I guess, pretty close to 2,000. If they want to stay at the same, it won't happen. It'll go backwards. The shops in general are doing it tough. I mean, the newsagents doing it tough. They used to have a doctor. They lost him. I hear there's a doctor coming back, which is great, but he'll struggle with only that sort of population. I know these new 50 homes, if it goes through, will probably give, 200 people maximum. But that would help the area and help the town survive. I just feel if we continue on, Jamberoo will only go backwards and become a one-horse town. And if I upset anybody by saying that, I'm sorry, but that's the way I feel. I feel we should put this to Gateway and see what comes back. I mean, we've had that many phone calls and that many emails about what should happen traffic-wise. We'll discuss all those, whether we put a roundabout in. There's lots of things that can be done to make it quite safe. But I think what the residents that are against this, and it's not half the town, definitely not half the town. The majority of people that have contacted me, I don't know about the other councillors, I reckon it's about 60-40, 60-30, are happy to see this go ahead and see what it's going to look at. So it's only a small percentage of the residents that really are dead set against it. And I think they've got to remember that when they came out here, a lot of them, it was vacant land that they built on, similar to this land there now. So if this is defeated, this motion is defeated, I will then move that it go to Gateway.
Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I think that we're really and truly at a crossroads with this development, and we've got to. I speak in favour of the development. I speak in favour of the motion. I think that we have to balance the way the future of our area is going to go And I see that the future will be either residential or maintaining its kind of peri-agrarian look. It's going to have that rural look. And I think those two things are mutually exclusive. And I think for the sake of consistency, we've got a number of contentious issues coming up here tonight, and I'm throwing my lot in with keeping the town of Jamberoo and our LGA as much as we can with a semi-rural appearance. I think that brings the tourism, and I think that's why people have come to live here. So often we have seen little bits of green space go off here and little bits of green space go off there, and it's like a death to a thousand cuts to an area like ours. We need to maintain as much green space and as much good agricultural land as we can, and we have to support that. The other option is to go residential, and for reasons I think that were quite logical. I think Shell Harbour went for that idea because the land up there is not as good as down here. The rainfall's different, and I think we need to differentiate ourselves from those towns, those solid urban towns. And I think we have to come down very heavily on the side of a semi-rural agricultural area. Thank you.
Is there anyone else any other councillor wishing to enter the debate? If not, I'll ask Councillor Way if he wishes the right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. I've deliberately kept it succinct and saying it's a rejection, and I think I gave the other councillors plenty of room to talk about all the reasons. I acknowledge that Jeff Boxall had some. There are some people there that probably wanted to do it, but we must go on what we've seen, and I've had, probably like all the other councillors, phone calls and emails and what have you. But given that I've supported all the other developments around Jamberoo to assist with the CBD, I'm aware there's two different groups out there. But I think in this case, we need to sit back and see how these developments go ahead that we've already approved, and also base that. That's why I like to look at the individual merits of each application, and that's why I've said we're just rejecting this application. If the proponent wants to proceed, as I've asked the question before, he can certainly go to planning. But I think it's reiterating that I believe council staff have acted appropriately, but we as councillors have a duty, I see, to reject this proposal. Thank you.
I'll just ask the General Manager to read out the motion.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the motion is that Council reject the subject planning proposal having regard to the commentary above.
This is a planning matter. I'll put that motion. Those in favour, please raise their hand. Against? Carried. Councillor Rice.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. So I have a subsequent motion, and that motion reads that Council engages with the community in order to locate areas suitable for future development in Jamberoo and to assist development of a Jamberoo-specific development control plan.
Would someone second that? Second. Councillor Riley. You wish to speak on it?
I think that one of the very big issues that is happening in Jamberoo at the moment is that the lots that have been developed are far denser and far different in character to what is currently the standard of housing in Jamberoo that's traditionally been there. That's compounded further with the opportunity to have dual occupancies there, so that rather than having an area that gradually decreases in density towards the surrounding countryside, we've got quite a congested urban area which has upset many of the Jamberoo locals just from the appearance of the developments that are going on. So I think that if we have a look at a new development control for Jamberoo, we might be able to take some of those things into account. I think it's impossible that Jamberoo stays exactly the size it is. I think that that's unrealistic, that the Jamberoo residents expect that nothing will ever change in Jamberoo. But I do think that we could go somewhere in looking at how they think a livable community could work, where development in Jamberoo could occur. But I think we can't do this without consultation with the community, and that's why I put this motion.
Councillor Ryland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the motion and everything that Councillor Rice has said. I also think that if we don't grab with both hands the opportunity to plan the future, it'll take off on its own, and we'll lose a lot. I think if we fail to plan at this stage, the consequences will be disastrous. Thank you.
Anyone speaking against that motion? You're speaking for the motion, Councillor Westhoff.
Yes. If we look on page 108, the Kiama Urban Strategy of 2011, it's founded on those 4 principles, and I think the 4 principles is what we're looking here, and especially the last 2 lines there. Hence, the approval of the Golden Valley Road rezoning proposal would be contrary to Kiama Council's urban strategy. So I think it's important that we do this.
Thank you. Councillor Way.
Yes, I'd also speak for the motion, and but I wouldn't want it restrictive with things that will happen in the future. But I think it's really important to consult with the community. But I wouldn't want anybody to say, no, we're not going to have any more development. We must be positive and look at the future.
You put the motion.
Yes. You move that motion be put. This is a planning matter. As this is a planning matter, a show of hands. Those in favour of the motion, those against, carried. Thank you.